4, 3, 2. All right, we are live. So I'm going to present here. Hello and welcome everyone to another Chat and Learn here with Power to Fly. My name is Mariella Marie, and as always, super excited to roll into this next hour with you all. Our guest speaker was actually on yesterday's Chat and Learn, and she had some phenomenal questions that she raised to our guest speaker yesterday. So I'm super excited to hear what she's got to share today. And I love the topic that we're going to dive into today. I love the title that you all had a chance to develop, and I just want to say thank you so much for taking time to present this to our community here at Power to Fly. Before we jump into today's conversation, just want to go over some quick housekeeping rules so that we all feel comfortable and confident in this next hour. No need to remind everyone, crazy things going on in the world, and you could be doing anything else, but you're deciding to spend the hour with us, whether you're here live or whether you're rewatching this video. So participation is key. If you are here with us live, we would love for you to participate. So I'm extending the official invitation to turn your cameras on if you feel called to do so. This is a safe space, and we believe in visibility here at Power to Fly. So turn your cameras on if you feel called to do so. Otherwise, hop off mute whenever you have something you want to share. I just ask that we all be respectful of each other, and let's try to have one person off of a mute at a time. If you do hop off mute, you will be featured in our live recording as this is being recorded. And with that said, I invite everyone to stop multitasking. I know that we are all pro multitaskers these days, but let's try to be present in this next hour so that we can ask our questions when they come up, write them in the chat box, hop off mute, or if you're rewatching this, maybe you can take notes and not be distracted with all of the tabs that you've got open. So I like to pose that to our listeners so that we can practice some mindfulness. This is being recorded, so if you do hop off mute, you will be featured in our live recording. Everyone will get a rewatch email who's here live with us, who signed up for the chat. You'll get a rewatch email with links to resources and ways that you can connect with our guest speaker, so be looking out for that. If anyone has any sensitive information and you prefer to be kept anonymous, you can find me in the chat box under Mariella Marie, and you can write to me privately. I will then flag your question or your reflection to our guest speaker and keep you anonymous. And the last thing that I'll say is we'd love for you to follow us on socials and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can keep up with all the great chats we've got in store that I have the pleasure of moderating. And this is a great segue for me to introduce myself. If this is your first time joining a Chat and Learn where I've moderated, again, my name is Mariella Marie. I live in Argentina and Patagonia, and I love speaking about the importance of emotional intelligence in the workplace and at home. So I might bring some of my reflections there as our guest speaker drops knowledge, because I love to reflect on, how we can deepen our emotional intelligence. If anyone wants to support the project that I'm currently working on, you can go to thepositiveforceteam.org. You can sign up for our newsletter, or I'm happy to connect with you on LinkedIn. You can find me under Mariella Marie there. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to pass the mic to our guest speaker who's calling from Southern California today. Seche, let us know a little bit about yourself, how you came to learn about Power to Fly, and what you're excited to share with us today.
All right, awesome. Do you have the next 10 hours to hear a little bit about myself?
Absolutely, absolutely. Go for it.
So I am I build bridges that drive more inclusive and equitable communities. So I'm a diversity, inclusion, and equity trainer and consultant. I do have a degree in chemical engineering, and I used to work for Caterpillar as a manufacturing engineer, and then eventually as a diversity and inclusion specialist. And I also worked for Intuit as a senior diversity and inclusion leader. And now I run my own business in diversity and inclusion equity consulting, and I write a column called Building Bridges for the San Diego Union Tribune about diversity, inclusion, and equity in the workplace. And I also work for the National Conflict Resolution Center. So yeah, a lot going on. And I am also a country singer. I use music and art to build bridges as well. So that's me. What else would you like to know? My social security number, my bank account number.
That's actually, where can we listen to some of your music? Because I'm absolutely an advocate for, being creative in order to build bridges. So I love that you were highlighting that in your introduction. Where can we find some of your work?
Absolutely. So on all my social media, you'll find me at Seche Music. And of course, my YouTube channel is Seche Music. So you should be able to find me there. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful.
And if you want to join, I have a street team of of music fans and authentic bridge builders. If you want to join that, you just leave me your email. If you're good to go, theblackcountrygo.com, I can include that link later, and you can join. You can keep up there.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, I can't wait to learn more about you. I know you're going to dive into more of your journey, and how you've been able to, create this business for yourself, as you speak more about your career, regarding the topic. So, before we go into learning more about you, I'd love for you to cover some of the principal themes you plan to cover in this conversation here this hour.
Absolutely. So today we're going to talk about how to build bridges as a way for true and effective allyship. So that really means getting to the root causes of things and coming up with effective solutions. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about my evolution from someone who didn't see racism. I thought everything's great to having been transformed and now helping to transform other people, and who want to build bridges, or who just want to stand in solidarity and help make this world better. And then we will also talk about the art of building bridges itself and using authenticity, leveraging authenticity to build bridges.
Awesome. Well, I'm super excited. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that we can get some FaceTime here. And I'm going to pull up these awesome questions that you all have submitted previous to the chat. If you hear your question come up and you're here live with us, we would love to hear from you. So just let us know. You can drop, you can raise your hand, your emoji hand, or you can let us know in the chat box that you're here. If you didn't get to submit a question, but something is, probing you to ask a question for our guest speaker here, please, 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 I cannot stress enough, we want to hear from you. So feel free to hop off mute or write in the chat box, because we do want to take time to honor your presence today on today's conversation. So write in the chat box or hop off mute whenever you have something that you want to share. All right, Seche, so let's start with this first question here. So speaking about your background, in your bio, you said that you had a hard time believing racism still existed because of your positive personal experiences. Can you share what event or circumstance led to this change in perspective? And how do you reconcile having mostly positive experiences while leading these kinds of conversations?
That's a great question. So first of all, I didn't always start leading this kind of conversation. So I've only been doing this for the last 10 years or so. So I started out in engineering. I had a pretty good job with a Fortune 50 company, and life was seeming great. So and then when I started as a diversity inclusion specialist, quite frankly, I didn't know what I was doing. I thought diversity and inclusion was just about holding hands and singing kumbaya. That was my idea of it. And so I kept people pretty damn comfortable in all those conversations because I genuinely just didn't know the hard stuff. And whenever I got pushback, it was from the Black people in the room because, I was simplifying things too much or reducing things too much. So that was me at first, and my experiences were mostly positive. But there are a few things that happened that caused me to evolve. One was just learning, because I was doing diversity and inclusion, and I realized I don't understand a huge segment of the population who say that things are unfair. And so I wanted to dig deeper and understand, what does this mean and how does that show up? So I did a lot of studying, I did a lot of research, I did a lot of history, and was coming across just the atrocities that have been happening in this country and how those impact the realities today. But what really helped it go home for me was that at that same time, I started experiencing a series of traumas myself. The traumas didn't have anything to do with my race, but they were traumas nonetheless. And that caused me to see life very differently. Because before, I used to think that, oh, if everyone could just put themselves in another person's shoes, the world would be a much greater place. Now I realize that's not even true. Right? That's not true, because I can put myself in someone's shoes for 5 minutes and be like, oh, it fits. I don't know why you're complaining. There's nothing wrong. It fits my leg. But I have not considered what are the conditions of their fit. And more importantly, I might wear the shoe for 5 minutes, but they have to wear it for 10 hours a day. Also, what terrain are they walking on? I wear it for 5 minutes and I'm on the carpet in my room, but they're wearing it and they're walking on sand or in mud or in the jungle, and it's a different kind of shoes, right? So I saw that we just can't say if I can do it, so can you. We can't just say, if I wore your shoes for 5 minutes, then I know what it's like, and so you can't complain. So experiencing that trauma is what really helped me evolve and be able to put into perspective all the history that I was learning and how it's impacting. It still shows up in the systems today, and even the new policies that are being made that still have remnants of white supremacy and racism. So that really helped me. But then also going out in the community and building bridges, like I wanted to understand. So I decided that for I decided that for the next entire year, most of my free time will be spent going to all Black issues related events, so I can try to understand what's going on, and I can also meet people. And as I hear their personal stories, then things cease to be just numbers, and things cease to be abstract. They come home, they're real. I have names and faces to go with whatever I'm learning. So that really helped transform me. And that's when my approach to diversity, inclusion, and equity also evolved. It changed to being to really understanding the equity part. It's not just about how can we get along. So that's kind of my journey with that.
Wow, thank you so much for your transparency. And actually, I love the way that you are speaking about the evolution of how you are becoming more aware. I mean, it's an ongoing process. I don't think that regardless of our stories, our personal stories, I don't think that we're ever finished learning. So the fact that you even took the initiative to go out and learn on your own, and really become active in these groups so that they could give you the names and make it less abstract for you. I really applaud you in that, because a lot of people
Thank you.
maybe would have just turned around and said, okay, well, this imposter syndrome that I feel, I shouldn't be diving into this, this field because I can't find the connection, but you actively went out there and to find the connection. So that's
Thank
really
you.
beautiful. And this is actually a good segue into our next question. Again, if you hear your question come up, let us know that you're here with us live. When you talk about your evolution to transforming hearts, minds, systems, and behaviors, do you mean you evolved or that you've helped others to evolve? Do these things happen in concert, or should one journey take priority over the other?
That's a great question. Another great question. It's actually both. And if you had to prioritize one, I would say prioritize yours. Because many a times we're so concerned about fixing things that we don't stop to actually look inward and see how we are contributing to the problem. Most of the times we might feel good by going to fix something, whereas we actually make it worse. So if one has to take priority, I would say it's yours. But that's not to say that you have to be perfect before trying to help other people in their evolution journey. You don't need to be perfect. We're all on this journey, and none of us will ever get to perfection. We will always be on will always be on a journey. And then also I for example, so now I also help other people in their transformation journey, because many people still cannot see racism. Right, they think, oh yes, I see, I know racism exists, but it's interpersonal. There's no such thing as systemic racism. If someone calls someone the N-word, yes, that's racism, but other than that, we don't see any racism. So I use my own transformation story actually to help some people to sow some seeds. And nobody becomes a changed person overnight. It's a process. It's about continuing to sow those seeds and continuing to challenge their assumptions. Yeah.
Let's dive into building bridges. I mean, I love just the term building bridges. And since I've moved from the States to Argentina, and I've worked with several artists and technologists, I'm always using that word. How can we build a bridge across the Americas at least, and and then of course globally. But this building bridge is such a beautiful vision, and actually, what it takes in order to build a bridge is takes self-reflection. It takes this empathy piece, but not just empathy for 2 seconds, and then you
Mm-hmm.
bounce. It's
Mm-hmm.
actively considering the other person's and along with yourselves, your privileges, your
Mm-hmm.
disadvantages, all of these things. It's very complex. It's a very complex
Mm-hmm.
tool. So I would just love to dive in a little deeper. So let's go a little more with building bridges here. How should
Okay.
we start conversations about building bridges? Is the approach different in a professional setting versus in our personal lives?
So that's a great question. Again, yeah, lots of people wonder about that. Is it different in professional settings than in our personal lives? Yes and no. First of all, in some professional settings, they have a strict embargo about don't talk about sensitive topics, which I think is code for we don't want anything to ever change. However, in some professional settings, they encourage you talking about sensitive topics. So it depends on what your the culture around your workplace is. I am always for encouraging discourse. I think discourse is very healthy so long as it is respectful. And then also in the professional setting, it depends on what we're talking about. Are you talking about just having one-on-one conversations with your friends or neighbors, or your coworkers, or are you going to the boardroom and trying to convince people to invest in DEI work or whatever? That's a different approach than than if you're just trying to build bridges. So if you're trying to convince, let's say, a boss or the board to invest in things, you are actually trying to convince them, and you're trying to show them um that you're right, or that there's value in this, and you have to give them points to show how this is going to bring value to the organization and impact the bottom line. You can't just use it's the right thing to do. However, when it comes on the interpersonal level, the goal should not be to show that you're right. The goal should really be curiosity. So you would start with just asking people their stories. It's not about getting in the head, it's about getting in the heart. It's not about debates or discussions. It's really about assessing the heart and assumptions. So there's a key here, a key mindset you want to have, which is peel back, not pile on. You want to peel back people's stories and their assumptions underneath their narratives. You don't want to pile on facts and statistics and so on, because people have alternative facts. So that's the main thing I want you to keep in mind. So approach someone, ask them, tell me about, what do you think about this situation? And as you, or have you ever experienced this or that? And as they tell you a story, you can ask more. And be sure to don't blame, don't shame. Instead, just keep being curious. Why? Just keep digging deeper. Because when you start by blaming and shaming, I think that's stupid, then people get their defenses up. And then you can't really access what you're trying to get into. The goal is to try to get them to come to a conclusion on their own. You want to give them something to think about. You don't want to tell them you're wrong. You just want to put doubt, sow seeds of doubt in whatever narratives it is that they are carrying. And then as you build bridges, also beware that there are some toxic people. And so when you come across one of those people who are just there to try to own you or get you, and they're not interested in having a genuine conversation, it might be time to back off, because it works if the people are being genuine. And someone might start up trying to own you, but as you show compassion in the conversation, they might switch and transition and see that you actually care about understanding where they're coming from. So that's the approach you want to use when you start building bridges. And then if you're building bridges with like people who belong to a marginalized community and you don't understand, like I was, like I didn't understand why they're saying there is marginalization going on. You want to be careful not to, as they tell you their stories, don't one up their story. Oh, but I had this happen to me too. Also, don't universalize their story like, oh, it's just a human issue, it's not a race issue. Because this also happened to me, right? There's a difference between cough and pneumonia. If someone has pneumonia, it's not that no one ever has cough, it's that there's a different level of severity and frequency. You know what I mean? So don't try to universalize people's experiences. Instead, listen to them and respond respectfully. Don't try to be giving them solutions. First, listen and acknowledge the impact that the story has on them, and then try to see if you can identify what their underlying needs were that were not met in the stories that they're telling. That's the way you really connect with them and really get past the numbers and into the reality, the human, the human behind the story you're hearing. Yeah, so that would be that for that question. There's a lot more, but let's try to see if we can get the other questions.
Well, I love that you're focusing on approaching it. I mean, you mentioned the heart, you mentioned these big, beautiful words that I just want to reflect on a little bit: compassion, curiosity,
Mhm.
active listening.
Mhm.
These are skills that come from more of a right brain thinking, right? Instead of left brain, you
Mhm.
were like, let's forget about the numbers for a minute. Let's get to the human
Mhm.
part. So this
Mhm.
curiosity that helps to build the bridge, this
Mhm.
active listening that helps to build the bridge also, and just this compassion as well, which is actually, 1,000 times bigger than empathy, because this compassion is just something that is indescribable, actually, in my opinion. But it's,
Mhm.
it's more of a feeling. So I love that you're approaching, how we can build bridges from the heart and from this right brain, and then of course having the left brain find the logic and help move
Right.
things forward in this left brain thinking world. So thank you for
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah, and people are at different stages. There might
Mhm.
be people who are at a stage where you can just give them the left brain stuff, but many a times you want to start with the heart brain. And if you realize someone is in that left brain stuff, left brain stage, you can just give them that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's continue speaking about building bridges a little more. This next question rings to that as well. If you're on the line here and this is your question, let us know that you're here. While building bridges with diametrically opposing groups, how can we stay respectful and try to understand if we genuinely find the other group's opinions and or beliefs repugnant or objectively wrong?
That's another great question. So you can stay respectful by framing why you're building bridges, which is, I'm not building bridges to prove that I'm right. I'm not pretty, I'm not building bridges to show that I'm right. I'm building bridges to get it right. Be open to the possibility of being wrong. When I started going to build bridges, I thought I was right, but I was open to the possibility of being wrong, and that allowed my mind to be able to consume, to be able to actually consider what it is I was discovering. So changing your mindset is the first way, to not just jump to tell someone they are wrong. And occasionally there's times when you just have to do that. And some people, that's all. It might not help build a bridge, but they deserve to hear that they are wrong. But most of the time, it's better to tell people that their perspectives are incomplete. That way you don't complete, that way they don't shut down. Um, because I love the story of the elephant and the six blind men. I don't know if you've heard that folk tale where they all met. They were walking in the forest and they came across an elephant, and each person was touching a different part of the elephant and they were trying to identify what this is. The person at the trunk said it's like a snake. The person on the tusk said it's a spear. The other one described it as a rope. The person on the tail, and so on and so forth. But the idea is they were all right, but they were all also wrong because their perspectives were incomplete. And that's the story of America. Different communities have different experiences of America. And and for us to say that someone else is wrong, if we were exposed to the exact same information that they were exposed to, there is no saying that we would not be thinking the exact same thing. Right? We like to think that propaganda affects other people more than it affects us, but we are all subject to it. we are, we all subject to different kinds of propaganda that we come across. So instead of saying you're wrong, it's better to say it's incomplete. And here, let me fill in the picture for you. Also, you don't want to you want to use your own transformation stories when you're trying to tell people, when you're trying to communicate that they're wrong, right? You're not saying they're wrong, but you use your own transformation stories. Like, yes, I used to think like this too, but here is how I evolved. Here is why I came to see the other side.
I'm like taking notes here because I love the way that you're fleshing out all of this. Actually, when you did, I know I shook my head no that I hadn't heard of that anecdote, but I have heard of it, and I think it's brilliant because
Mm-hmm.
it's the fact that they're all right, but they're also all wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And so what is missing? And it's that big question. Well, what is missing?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How can we come to a conclusion where we all agree that this is an elephant and it's not a snake, or it's not a rope and all of these things. I think that's a beautiful analogy.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's move on to this next question here. Is there any way to recognize a lost cause I know some people will never change their minds, but I'm weary of my tendency to maintain a dog determination to the detriment of my own mental, emotional energy.
I love that question because that's like me. I always think everyone's salvageable. Like nobody's really bad. There's just a mistake somewhere. That is so me. But I've come a long way. Yes, there is a way to recognize a lost cause. So first of all, not everyone's up to any good. There are some people who actually know what the issues are, but they will intentionally gaslight you. They will intentionally put words in your mouth that never came out. So when you start seeing that happens and it happens consistently, run because they're not worth your time. Don't try to build bridges with people who are not interested because there are many who are, and that would be a better use of your time. So 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 yeah, don't that would be a lost cause trying to build a bridge with someone who doesn't want to build a bridge. And you can recognize that by gaslighting, especially when they twist your words, they keep going away from the subject, then that becomes a waste of your time. And like I mentioned earlier, there are toxic people, and that's what we should watch out for because they would derail the conversation. They would derail the solutions we're trying to investigate. And then also you need to find out, are these people just trying to prove they're right? Then that makes it harder. However, some people might start out just trying to prove they're right, but because of your approach to the conversation, they might switch. They might switch. But if they're constantly always trying to prove they're right and not really listening to what you're saying, you might want to let it rest. And sometimes, you let it rest doesn't mean it was a failure. You sowed a seed, another person will sow a seed somewhere down the line. Sometimes I might circle back to you. I've had people be angry at me 1 minute and then the next day they're like, oh, I thought about this. And wow, this was exactly what I needed. But they were angry at first, like, because I made them uncomfortable. So, and then another thing about recognizing a lost cause is, let me explain what building bridges is not. Yes, I say we should have empathy. We should realize that if we were exposed to the same thing they were exposed to, we would probably think the same. But building bridges doesn't mean trivializing your own pain. It doesn't mean excusing people's actions. It doesn't mean running away. It doesn't mean not demanding accountability. And it doesn't mean putting your self-care at risk. Yes, it is painful. Everything I'm talking about today takes time. And you need a huge emotional bank to be able to deal with it. Because as I build bridges, there are many times when I just want to explode. Like, but then I don't. So I don't do that when I don't have the grace to give. I need to have grace to give if I'm going to be building bridges with people I know are diametrically opposed to what I know is right. But if I'm building bridges with people who say there's something wrong and I don't understand, I'm trying to reach out to them. I don't need as much of an emotional bank as I do with those on the other side. Because this is me really trying to understand them to say something is wrong. Even though, yes, I need an emotional bank there because I hear very painful things that I never knew were happening. So I need to carry that and sit with it and reflect on it. So put that in mind. And I love this phrase. I don't know who it came from, but I saw it on social media one time. It said self-care is choosing not to engage with those who are committed to misunderstanding you. So when you sense that someone is just committed to misunderstanding, they're not actually processing what you're saying, and they're not responding to the actual conversation you're having, self-care is to get out. They're not committed. So yeah, building bridges doesn't mean you have to go and trivialize your pain or your reality or your experience. It means taking the time to dig into the weeds to understand what are people's underlying needs and then showing them your underlying needs and then finding solutions. It doesn't mean you're going to deny that your reality is not as painful as it is just because you want to make it so comfortable for someone else to comprehend. There is no growth that happens without discomfort.
Ooh, preach it. Say that again. The big thing that you're saying that I just want to reflect on a little bit is that you're saying it takes time. And you even said you have
Yes.
to dig through the weeds, and a
Mhm.
lot of people don't want to do that. They don't have the
Mhm.
time to do that, or maybe they don't
Mhm.
have the emotional bank that you mentioned to do that. They don't have the understanding, the curiosity, the compassion, all these things that you mentioned before. So my question is, let's say that someone is interested, but they keep leaning back to, I don't have the time, I don't have the compassion, I don't have, maybe they don't have those words as clear as I'm saying it now, but they
Mhm.
just say no because it's easier to say no.
Mhm.
But I think that the world is asking that we do take time to
Mhm.
unravel this a little more. So how can we make more time and be more intentional, so that we can hopefully have a trickle effect?
Great question. So building bridges is great, and being soft and approaching with compassion and so on is great. Um, but some people will not do that unless they had consequences. For example, yeah, I hear you. I hear that yes, there are many people of color are experiencing oppression in one way or the other, but I don't have the time. I'm just trying to run a business here, right? And the only way they will make the time is if it affects their business or whatever it is they're passionate about, or if they have some kind of consequences. So there are some people who are not necessarily bad, but they just wouldn't prioritize anyone else's interest. And they can only do that if it hits them in the pocket. And so I am not an advocate of cancel culture in the sense in which many people use it. Although I think sometimes cancel culture is an accountability that has never been happening. So there is nuance around canceling people. Like it's not like either never cancel anyone or always cancel someone. No. I just think as much as I don't like cancel culture, in some cases that's deserved because those are people who say, I don't want to, I don't care that what I spew on the news every day is very detrimental to many communities. And I am not going to take the time to figure out why. And if they have no consequences, they have no incentive to make the time to figure out why. After all, the thing they're spewing is not detrimental to them. So in some cases, some people only pay attention to consequences.
And this is a great moment to reflect on some folk. I really appreciate that you're highlighting the fact that, unfortunately, some people won't recognize the importance of doing this work unless they have, a kickback monetarily or financially. And so what I've heard a lot of speakers talk about and highlight is the economic power that, a marginalized group has. So stop supporting this company or this organization and help them see this, what happens when you don't give voice to a marginalized community, or when you decide to let it go by the wayside. You can lose a lot of
Mhm.
money because if you aren't recognizing trans women or trans men, or Black women, or it can definitely, if that group decides to not support your company or your
Mhm.
project, you could lose out monetarily. So I really appreciate you highlighting that. This is actually a
Yeah.
great gateway into speaking about allyship. You did speak a little bit about, sowing the seed so that if someone is not willing to listen, let's say, that at least you've mentioned something and you are sowing a seed, and hopefully someone else can sow another seed, and eventually
Mhm.
something will grow out of that. Um,
Mhm.
this question that leads more towards allyship kind of rings towards that too, with sowing seeds. What are some common mistakes people make when trying to be an ally? And are these errors different for those just starting out on this journey?
Oh, that question is so sweet. I wish we had 10 hours. Um, so, one common mistake is thinking that it would be easy. And as soon as you brush up on discomfort, you're like, okay, I'm out. No, let's use discomfort as a way in, not an excuse to get out. No growth happens without discomfort. See discomfort as a good sign that something's happening. So that's one excuse, is thinking it's going to be comfortable or that it's going to be easy. It's not. If you need therapy, take therapy. I had to take a lot of therapy to deal with the things I was realizing and the ways in which I had been perpetuating the situations. So it is not necessarily going to be easy. And again, it might cost you something. It might cost you your time to be able to dig into the weeds and really understand um, what's happening. But even if it costs you your time, at the end of the day, if we understand each other enough to come up with systemic solutions that will work for all of us, it's a win-win. It's a win-win. society is so polarized today, and change is not going to come from the politicians. It's not. It's going to come from us on the ground. And every good thing that has ever happened in politics didn't come because the politician decided, oh, I think I just have a good heart and I'm going to make change now. I'm going to end slavery. I'm going to pass civil rights. No, it came because of demand from the people. That's why we need to understand each other's struggles and stand in solidarity. So it might cost you time now to be able to understand someone enough to stand in solidarity, whether it's at your workplace or just in society in general. But in the long run, the change that could come from that can be good for everyone because a rising tide lifts all boats. So another mistake that people make is being more concerned with proving that I'm an ally than actually being an ally. People are not interested in our racial resumes. Don't try to show all the things, and don't try to call the names of all your Black friends or all the classes you've gone to and so on. Just be more interested in actually making a difference than in proving that you're an ally, because that can end up hurting more. And then also thinking that our intentions are enough, like, oh, I pity the man who died unjustly, and that's it. Pity doesn't make change. Intentions doesn't bring about change. You actually have to do something. I pity all my Black co-workers who are not getting promotions, even though they're so qualified. No, talk to someone about it. Be an ally. And then another mistake is thinking that it's a binary, like, oh, I'm a good person, so I can't possibly be racist or do anything racist. Or, oh, she said something racist, she's a bad person, she deserves to be canceled. No, it's not a binary. And also, racism continues to exist because many of us don't know how we contribute. So it's not a good or a bad. It's not someone said something racist or did something racist, so they're bad and they deserve punishment. Or that I'm good and I can never do something wrong. So it is not a binary. Also, wanting to jump right into fixing the situation without actually taking time to understand what it is. A lot of us have this savior complex. We want to save, we want to fix, but we really should work on our own internal transformation and learn what this is all about, how this shows up, how I'm contributing to it, before you're trying so hard to fix it, because you would do the world much more good if you can transform the way you think about these things, because the solutions you try to come up with are based off of how you think. And if how you think is still based on understanding that there are disparities because Black people are just lazier, or people of color don't have enough self-determination, then the solutions you try to go support will never help with the problem. And then another is being a bystander instead of an upstander. So a bystander watches what's happening, maybe microaggressions against someone else, but does nothing. An upstander might do something, but that's a whole other complex conversation. You don't necessarily always have to upstand. There's a complex conversation. But trying as much to be of support when someone needs it. It's amazing what a difference can make. One person telling a bully, saying, this can't be done here, or don't do that, or I see that, is amazing what a difference it can make sometimes. And then another is that is hard, is that finding that hard balance between meeting people where they are and requiring accountability. Because you want to meet someone where they are. How do you balance that with accountability? That's kind of tough, and that's a deeper that's a deeper conversation. But yes, being able to educate yourself instead of jumping right into trying to fix right away, but at the same time not rely on people in marginalized groups to be responsible for your education, because it is tasking. If they're able, cool. If they're not, do not rely on them, but involve them in solutions and strategizing instead of thinking you know the answers.
Yes, you are dropping so much knowledge. And you just added more time to the process, right? Because it's like, okay, there's an elephant in the room that we need to agree on that at first. We need to agree on that this is an elephant, right? But before we can speak together, I need to first take some more time to do some self-work on my own. So you have to find time to work on yourself, and then you have to find time to, implement that into the community. So, to not be afraid that it takes time, and also to find the comfort in the discomfort, and see that as a good sign that you are making progress. I love everything that you're highlighting, and you're right, we do need more time because you totally are diving in deep, and I love it. Let's speak a little bit more about authenticity here. So
Okay.
this question reads, I want to convey sincerity in my attempts to educate myself and be honest about where I am on my journey to better allyship. But I worry that authentically sharing will reveal how deeply anxious and ashamed I am about the things I'm trying to unlearn and how much I don't yet know. How can I keep doing the work without centering myself?
I really love that question. So first of all, this work is not about shame or guilt. It's about responsibility, right? You may not have done it, but you can become part of the solution. So the goal of diversity, inclusion, and equity and the building bridges work I do is not to shame or guilt people. It's to, but yes, that is part of the process. As in, you will experience that because you're human. I experienced that, and I had to walk through a lot of therapy. I had to walk through that a lot, but that's not the goal. The goal is not to make you ashamed or guilty. It's just to help you recognize what the problems are and become part of the solution. So together we have systemic power, right? And to change things. So it's okay. And I appreciate that vulnerability. And it's okay. I think authenticity is the key to build bridges. Because I don't like when I come in a room of discussions and people are trying to be politically correct and trying to say the right things. Because if they only say the right things, but it's not really what they're thinking, we cannot deconstruct what they're thinking. We cannot help them grow. You cannot help me grow if you're just saying the right thing. Whereas if you were authentic, I might learn from your story. As we deconstruct your story, I might learn. So authenticity is the key to building bridges. And yes, you might feel shame and guilt, and that's okay. It's a human feeling. We should feel all our feelings, and we will walk through it, and it will be over, and it will be okay. And sometimes it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It is just the process. And then another thing about that is, how do you not center yourself? It depends on how you're centering yourself. Are you centering yourself and, oh, poor me, look at me, I feel bad because these other people are oppressed, and oh, this thing happened to me that time and that also happened to me? Or is it, are you centering yourself as in, how have I been contributing to the problem? As in, oh, I recognize I have done X, Y, or Z in the past, and that was a problem. Now, what do I do about it? I don't think we can make change without centering ourselves. Because some people tend to look at diversity and inclusion as over there. Is that thing with people of color? Is that thing with women? I'm not part of it. It's not part of me. You actually have to center yourself in order for it to make sense. See what your role is in all of this. So it all depends on how you're centering yourself. And there was a lady, I forgot her name, but she does a talk and she wrote a book about whiteness, what it means to be white. And she says how one of the reasons we're not making much progress is that we think race is over there and white people don't have a race. If we don't understand how we are central to the story, how can we really make change? So there's 2 kinds of centering yourself. There's the one where it's for me, now let's make this all about me and how I feel bad and how I suffer, as opposed to, let's see what I can do about it and how I've contributed to it, and so on. I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely. And just the word centering also helps me reflect on the word grounding, because, maybe someone has misconstrued the way that you can be centered, or, putting this kind of like bright light and you're kind of like in the spotlight and it's really uncomfortable and you don't want to be on stage, you prefer to be watching someone else on stage. But instead of thinking it that way, seeing it as, you're grounding yourself, you're connecting with the reality of,
Right.
maybe your grandfather had slaves.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean that you're a racist person, but that's
Right.
the reality. And grounding
Mm-hmm.
yourself in that and saying, going forward, I want to try to be more aware. I want to be,
Mm-hmm.
making extra
Mm-hmm.
efforts to, be involved in DEI, all these things that, and not to be, not to want to sit down and watch from I think you said, being a bystander. That's just another way that we can be active in resolving some of these issues.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move on to this next question here.
Yeah. And by the way, I understand why she said centering, because sometimes some people then make it all about them, and and they try to one up your story. And that's not the kind of centering we want. By the way, Anna, thank you so much for having your video on. If you want to unmute and ask a question, that's great. I really appreciate seeing your face.
Awesome. Yes. Go for it, Anna. Go. You hopped off mute. Did you want
Yeah,
to say
thank
something?
you. Yeah, no, I'm putting my son to bed, so I have got like smooth music in the background. No, I love this event. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right. So speaking of authenticity, let's move on to this next question here. I am a white woman in software engineering, and my concerns about our lack of response to the Black Lives Matter movement, led to me being asked with, sorry, let me start over. Having a hard time reading this question. Maybe I need to resolve some of the things that I'm working with as well. So I am a white woman in software engineering, and my concerns about our lack of response to the Black Lives Matter movement led to me being tasked with leading D&I initiatives at work. I've experienced some discrimination due to being a woman in technology, but I cannot compare my experience to that of Black people in the States. I'm struggling with imposter syndrome while leading these efforts, but I feel it's supported by valid facts. I lack any formal education or experience. Can I leverage authenticity to be effective in this new role, or should I be taking another track? This is a great question.
Yeah, this is a great question because that's actually how I started. I had no official experience or education in diversity, inclusion, and equity. And I really appreciate this person's question. She's actually much more self-aware than I was. She's much more self-aware that she probably doesn't understand a whole lot and that there's a lot more work she needs to do. I thought I knew it all. Well, I didn't think I knew it all, but I didn't think there was that much to know. So I unfortunately, diversity, inclusion, and equity is one of those fields where they think you don't have to have expertise in order to do it. They think anyone can just do it. And it's not necessarily true. We think if you're Black, then automatically you can do it, which is also not true. Or that anyone can do it. So I appreciate the self-awareness in this question. And what I would say to that, like if I could go back to when this role was given to me, just because I was interested, how I would do it differently is to find partnerships and really ask, can I find a co-conspirator that we're both in this role? Or I hire a consultant who knows what this is about, you know, to coach me through and so on. So I'm not saying it's necessarily wrong to put someone in the role who's had no experience. I'm just saying, which if you do that, you want to have them give them the resources, have them work with someone who actually knows what this is, because that's how you ended up with me in that role for a whole year, who didn't think racism existed. How can you be in D&I and you don't think racism existed? So I really appreciate the honesty of that question. And yes, authenticity is how you make a real impact in that role. So find a partnership, hire a consultant, and see if you can find partners, a partner in the organization who understand and who is interested. Another mistake organizations make is that instead of hiring professionals to come to this role, they just take the employees. You do this as if, and that is most of the time is on top of their day job. And this is tasking. It is tasking, and it's just not fair to those employees. And sometimes it can almost feel like I've had employees tell me they regret asking for this because the burden then got put on their shoulders. It's completely different to be able to navigate this complex thing. So employers, we're trying to get employers to come to that understanding that this is not like organizing the company picnic.
Yes, and you must invest in that expert, right? To not just say, okay, well, you are a part of this marginalized group, or you are not, but you are interested in, you know, developing something within the company, because then you're adding so much. Like you said, it's super tasking, and I feel like, you know, these days it's a super buzzword, you know, DEI, but what does it truly mean, and how are we really making moves towards, you know, adding regulations or, creating new protocols and educating, first and foremost ourselves and other folks. So I really appreciate you calling that out, because I think that just amplifies the lip service that, then comes about, and, all of the other ugly things that come about, because just not being intentional about, okay, we need to invest the time, the money, and make sure that we're not putting burdens on anyone else. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I really appreciate this question. I didn't have that much self-awareness.
I love self-awareness is like one of the most important aspects of emotional intelligence, right? Before trying to do anything else, we need to self-reflect. We need to take that time to contemplate, and then move forward to make some moves. Speaking of moving forward, we've got about 8 minutes left. So I told you that the hour would fly by. I want to try to get to one more question here, and then I want to see if anyone else on the line wants to write anything in the chat box or hop off mute. So could you share with us your best and worst experiences in this field? And what did you learn from these experiences?
So my best experience, it was sad that that's the reality, but it was also my most profound experience. I told you about how when I started just going to the community and attending everything, all events that I could that had something to do with some Black issue. And one of this was when the movie Black Panther came out, and then there was this discussion by the Association of Black Psychologists about the impact of the movie Black Panther on Black people's psychology. And somewhere in that conversation, I told the story. I just shared how I used to think Black people were lazy or stupid or just not responsible. And I bought into all the narratives. If they just had enough self-determination, and how I thought every time there was a police killing, it was because they didn't do the right thing. And then I told them how I've now seen videos of people getting away from the police or even just standing, begging for their lives, and they're getting shot. And how I also told how I saw how the impact trauma had on me and what it took for me to recover and be thriving again. And as I read history, I see how Black people have historically been oppressed, and not really much has been done to redress it, even to acknowledge it. And I said, I think it's a miracle that this community is still here. Like, I don't get it. So that was all I said. I was just saying how I used to think one way, and after going through this is how I think, and I don't understand how you all are here. And everyone in the room started crying. We had grown people crying. And then this man who's like 81 years old and he's got a PhD in psychology, he was like, I never speak. But I have to make a comment. What you just said is so validating to a whole lot of us, because people hardly hear us. They hardly see us. They think we're weak. They don't understand that we're some of the most resilient people. They don't understand what we have to go through. They think they're so hardworking and we're weak. They don't understand how hard we have to work. And people were crying, and there wasn't enough tissues in the room. Someone had to go to their car and get more Kleenexes. I did not realize how much an impact that little story of my transformation would have. And so that was one of my best moments, most transformative. It is sad that that's the reality, but it was huge for me. And then that helped me find purpose in the traumas that I went through, because those traumas didn't make any sense. I was like, this is why. Because how could I be a DEI person and did not understand?
Thank you so much for your transparency and how you are sharing your experience. I think it's very important because we oftentimes don't hear this side of the story. So I applaud you. I'm grateful for you. Thank you so much. I appreciate the fact that you are taking time to share your story, to share your tips, on how we can walk through and navigate these murky waters and to build bridges. We've got about 4 minutes left. So I just want to give you, time to share some food for thought, maybe, encourage us to, self-reflect, put all these things into practice that you've been mentioning in the past hour. But I would just love to give the final word to you. Can you leave us with some food for thought and cover anything else that you'd like to in the next 4 minutes?
Yes, absolutely. And I also want to say to your question earlier about what are some mistakes allies make. Sometimes mistakes allies make, especially with other allies, is um, expecting them to be where we are, right? So we need to, while we might have woken up to some realities, some people are still waking up, and we need to remember that we were once there. and and so and let's also leverage our transformation stories instead of trying to prove that we're better than anybody else. Let's try to leverage our transformation stories to bring people, to help people on that journey. And then also with respect to the question about how do we start building bridges conversations at work, I actually do community building circles, which is having these courageous conversations, facilitating these courageous conversations between coworkers or friends or community members. But we choose a topic and I design questions specifically to help people dig into their stories, because not everyone always has the context or the expertise to be able to navigate the stories and use and be able to create the space for them and leverage them for the learning that we need. So if at your organizations you ever want any of these circles, I do offer those. It really helps with building bridges and starting those conversations. And then a couple things I want to leave you with is remember that self-care is choosing not to engage with people who are committed to misunderstanding you. And also remember there's many ways to skin a cat. Yes, I'm talking about compassion, empathy, and so on listening. There are some people who only listen to consequences. So that might be another way for the people in the circumstances where it's needed. Also, don't expect everyone to be like me. Don't expect everyone to build bridges like me. Some people are harsher in their approach, and that's okay. So some people say, I like the way you do it, and this other person, no, they're wrong. They're not wrong. That's their style. And different things work for different people. So that's what I want to leave you with. Remember, it's about peeling back, not piling on.
Yes. And it just the image of, in order to build bridges, we cannot build walls. We cannot keep the walls up. We have to have that vulnerability piece come in and that transparency piece come in so that we can move forward and take a walk on the bridge with someone else. The allyship, advocate, all the things that you have shared today, so important. I'm definitely going to rewatch this video. I hope that you all will too and take notes. I was taking notes as I was moderating, so I want to be intentional and rewatch this. Can you let us know how we can connect with you when we finish this conversation? And you can just, you don't need to write it in the chat box. You can say it out loud just in case folks are rewatching this video as well.
Okay. Yes, you can connect with me on my website, setche.com. So that's SETCHE, setche.com. And you can put in your email in my contact list that's there. And my email address is buildingbridges@setche.com. And I've put a link in the chat to subscribe to my blog. And then finally, if you would like to connect to my music email list, my street team of bridge builders through music and other forms of art, you can visit go.blackcountrygirl.com. I will put that in the chat as well, go.blackcountrygirl.com, and you can have your email. I'll have your email and I can keep you posted what's happening musically as far as building bridges goes. And I have really enjoyed being with you and getting all the great questions.
Yes, me too. Thank you so much, Setche. Thank you so much. I'm definitely going to check out your music. I'm going to check out your website as well. I hope that our live callers and the folks who are rewatching this will as well. We've got folks applauding in the chat box here. So thank you everyone for taking time out of your busy schedules to participate in this really important conversation. I hope that this has been encouraging and fruitful. Setche, thank you so much for your actionable tips and tricks on how we can be more accountable, more authentic, and help build bridges together. So hope to see you soon. Thank you, everyone. And we'll see you on the next Chat and Learn.
Anna, Butlick, and everybody. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. We'll see you all on the next Chat and Learn. Take care.
Bye.